blast off.
Blast off. All right, and silence, please. Welcome to Low Volume Small Form Factors podcast, and today we have a very, very special episode as we have arrived at a unique milestone in the life and times and history of smallformfactor.net and small form factor computing in general, for it is our 1-year anniversary since launching the smallformfactor.net news website. Of course, a venture between us three J's, me, Joshua Ramirez, a.k.a. Playful Phoenix. I'm also joined by James Schell, a.k.a. Abophobia. James, how are you today?
Doing good. It's so crazy to think it's already been a year. Like, it's just nuts.
Yeah, it went by incredibly quickly.
Yes, it has. Been a fun year, though.
And, of course, the gentleman that approached us and sort of began smallformfactor.net in many ways, including by bringing the domain name, which is kind of important. John Morrison, a.k.a. Confucius. How are you, John?
My baby just turned 1.
Yay!
It's the third one I've done.
Oh, man. So, indeed. So, we didn't have much news going on these past few weeks, so we figured that it would be an opportune time, and I'll be posting something later today on the news site that folks can read. But we figured that it was an opportune time to really just kind of reflect and spend some time to talk about, what was sort of the inspiration or impetus for us to create the news site and all the things we've been able to do since we've started it. What surprised us? What's been kind of cool? What are things we continue to work on or otherwise hope to be able to do in the next year or so. So I guess we should begin by starting with kind of the beginnings of what inspired us to sort of come together and create the website. And John, I was wondering if you could sort of speak to that, since you actually approached us a little over a year ago with this idea of bringing this website live.
Yeah, well, originally when I first got into small form factor stuff, I was on a website called BitTech, and their forum wasn't really conducive to those who don't build ATX systems with 5 graphics cards and 1 million radiators. And I saw that Craig Brugger was running this website called Lysias, and I thought, okay, I'll go join up there. After a short amount of time there, I approached Craig and sort of with the idea of growing the website. So we looked at WordPress and a couple of other CMS options and built on that. So I did a few articles there. And eventually we decided it was time to rebrand, so we moved over to a different domain, which was Small Form Factor Review. Now, due to various issues, which we won't go into, that one didn't quite succeed. So I'm kind of sitting here sort of bored, not being able to do what I wanted to do, which is kind of enlighten the world towards small form factor stuff and reviewing stuff in a particular mindset. So a couple of years after, or a year and a half or so after that, I was sitting at work bored. I got an email, and it's name.com is doing a 99-cent .net sale. I was like, okay, I'll see if this is available. And lo and behold, smallformfactor.net was available, so I bought it. And not long before that, I joined up with the forum that Joshua and James had started, which was the Small Form Factor Forum. And I thought, oh, we've got an opportunity here. We've got a community that's already built, and I've got this domain name. Let's try something. So I approached, I can't remember who I approached first. I think I approached James first about it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I can't remember why. And we had a chat about it, invited Joshua into the conversation, kind of went from there. decided on kind of the platform, the design, what our focus would be, how we were going to run it, and we launched a year ago.
Woo!
Yay! But it's taken off so much more than I expected it to.
Yeah, I think that's true of all of us.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a third time lucky for me with the website, because we had Lysias and then Small Forked SFF Review, and now we've got this one, and it's great. We've had manufacturer support. We thank the manufacturers that have supported us with products to review, sending us information for news posts and whatnot. And the community has just been fantastic in supporting us as well. And since I'm thanking people, just in the background, just on our IRC server and through other methods of communication, I've always had the support of Jordan, or also known as Jord on the forum, and Gull Acoustic, who were both very much for building this website, continuing the legacy kind of thing. And it's they're continuing to support us today, and it's great.
No, all worthwhile people to mention. All right, so James, so do you remember when John first approached you? He talked a little bit about sort of getting the domain and whatnot, and you were the first person to talk to him before I was kind of in the loop with this whole idea about the news site. But like, what do you remember about that kind of first point of contact?
Yeah, because the forum had been running for a few months, and it was doing okay, I guess. Not anything fantastic. But yeah, when we had started the forum, because like at the time there weren't any SFF dedicated sites, whether forum or just news sites or anything, because Lysias had been defunct by that point, and then like the last big news site, SFF news site, was Sudhanian, but that had been defunct for a long time by that point. So yeah, there wasn't any news site. So I had kind of thought about it, but that's a pretty big commitment in time and resources. So it kind of had to put it off as like a future project to be done like one day. So yeah, forum had been running for a few months, and then just out of the blue, just got a PM from this guy, this Confucius fellow, asking like, "Hey, I'm a writer. I used to write for Lysias, and I have this domain, and it's like, do you want to do some kind of collaboration with a small form factor forum?" So by the time I got into SFF hardware, Lysias had been basically defunct by that point. I got into kind of SFF stuff kind of late, actually. So I wasn't real familiar with him or any of the Lysias or the SFF review stuff. So did some research, and unfortunately, like, the old Lysias site and forum is kind of gone, but there's still bits and pieces of it on like the Internet Archive. So did some looking there, and then ITX Gamer, and kind of what was functioning of the SFF review site, and did some reading, and yeah, saw he had written like tons of really interesting SFF articles, which I had no idea how I had missed it up to that point. But yeah, so yeah, he was definitely legit, knew what he was doing, he could write. So I think we had talked back and forth a little bit over PMs, and then I kind of invited you to the conversation, and here we are.
Oh man, yeah, and it's so funny. I remember when I was looped into this conversation that you two had just started having, and us starting the forum, like James and I were already working on stuff for Chimera Industries. I was, moving really rapidly towards the end of my senior year in college. So I was going through graduation, which meant I was going through job hunting. I was going through my senior project. I was going through, last classes and trying to, figure out my living situation. And I just had so much on my plate. And then like this opportunity showed up. And on the one hand, I was excited because I saw like, oh, there's totally a need. There isn't a website that's really focused on this stuff. Like, I totally want this to be a thing. I'd love to help make it a thing. And on the other hand, I was like, right now, we have to do this right now. because I knew that I just wasn't going to be able to say no and not like help build it out. But I also sort of knew that like I wasn't going to have a life anymore. But between yeah, between the two sides, like, okay, am I gonna let, rational thought and focus and working on things in real life take over, or am I just going to let my enthusiasm take over and just get this thing done? And of course I'd let my enthusiasm take it over and got this thing done and just got away with too few hours of sleep every day. Because, it was a fair, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but it was a fair amount of work very soon after we even knew each other to build out all this stuff from, I mean, James was pivotal in terms of getting everything set up in terms of hosting and all of this. And, we spent a lot of time figuring out the right, I didn't have the time or focus to build us a website from scratch, and Word, just going with WordPress made it pretty easy. So we made a point of looking for sort of a template we could use, but then modifying that pretty heavily. And I did a lot of the work there. James did some of the work too. And then of course you had importing all the content from some of these older sites that John had worked on, as well as writing all sorts of new content. So we had lots of solid content on launch. We had we have an interview with Josh of Not From Concentrate, as well as news articles. Like, we were basically operating in full capacity for as a newsroom for a solid 2 weeks or so before we even launched, just so that we had like a solid cadre of content the moment that the site went live. And then we had sort of, how do we want to integrate this with the forum? How do we want to let people on the forum know, like, how's that relationship? And using the forum as a way to have comments instead of doing like segregated comments on the news site that have nothing to do with the forum. We're like, well, no, we can use sort of the forum as a way to encourage readership, and readership can be directed to the forum, and thus you have these websites sort of supporting each other, and they're part of this broader community. And it was definitely a bit of a slog to get all of that done. It was a lot of work up front, and we wanted to launch pretty quickly, but we did it. And the opportunity to launch not only with some interesting news content, but also to have the interview with Josh, that focus on not just what's going on in terms of product releases, but also what's going on within the community of small form factor, which of course we had sort of quickly established as being at the center of with the forum. That we were able to kind of establish from the very beginning, like the tone and the focus and the intent of what smallformfactor.net was meant to be, and sort of what our reason for being was. And I thought we did a pretty good job of that, and it was really exciting to be able to do that for sure. So one of the things I figured I could do, just because obviously internally we've been paying attention to them, they've been really important in terms of monitoring kind of our progress and engagement with the community, and sort of just validation of what's working, what isn't working. So I just wanted to share some of the stats and figures and other things behind the website. And I'll do this for both the news site and the forum, just because I think in many ways, they're obviously interrelated and one and the same, and a lot of the commentary and discourse surrounding the websites is naturally occurring on the forum itself. But the last update we sort of shared publicly in terms of stats was around the beginning of the year. I mean, basically 6 months ago. Obviously, a lot has happened since then. If you look around on the news site, if you go to the announcements section, you can sort of see the last bit of info that we shared. So you can sort of use that as a reference point when comparing, where we're at now. But just looking at our Google Analytics stats, starting basically using the 1 week trailing average, so you can get a sense of what average traffic is, given that like during weekends it tends to be a bit different than on weekdays. For the news site, relative to where we were at the beginning of the year, our traffic is up around 5x. So we've seen a quintupling of traffic over the past 6 months or so. And then on the forum, it was a little bit less dramatic. It's only roughly multiplied by 2.5 times, but it also had a lot more traffic, relatively speaking, at the beginning of the year. And then presently, I would say the news site has around half of the traffic as the forum, which actually is quite a lot when you consider the fact that, with news sites, you tend to look at 1 or 2 articles and be done. With the forum, you tend to be checking in pretty darn often. Furthermore, at this point in time, across both the websites, I mean, when we're tabulating, page views or even things like sessions and whatnot, we're easily in the thousands and thousands every day. And if you're looking at on a month-to-month basis, we're talking hundreds of thousands of sessions and page views and all of this. So traffic's been very consistent, but also very, very strong. Not only that, but we've also seen this very strong trend. When we started and closer to the beginning of the year, the vast majority of our traffic was based in the United States, even though we've always sort of felt that we were an international community. But one thing that we've noticed over time is that we've seen this broadening diversity of where web traffic is coming from. So for the news website, just over 58% of our traffic is now from the U.S., and the rest of the sources are either the UK or Germany, Russia, France, Japan, obviously, naturally, places like New Zealand,
Australia.
But it isn't. We're not talking like a 90% U.S. and then there's everyone else. Obviously, the U.S. is still relatively dominant, but you've got substantial slices of the overall pie going to countries all over the world. And then for the forum, it's a little more tilted towards the U.S., 64%. But again, similar breakdown in terms of the geography of where visitors are coming from. And to me, that's actually really important just because, I think a lot of online resources tend to be really, really, really U.S.-centric. And, I mean, we're somewhat U.S.-centric, so...
Yeah, I'm working on that.
Yeah, there is that. But But honestly, on that spectrum, I feel like we've done a good job, and some of our most vocal community members, for sure, are not from the U.S., but generally come from places all over the world, and that does a lot to sort of add a diversity of perspective and opinion, and there's certain ideas and products and other things that are only available in certain markets, and so it's an awesome way for all of us to get exposure to things that we might not otherwise see. And that just, further contributes to some of the awesome aspects of our community and of our reporting, which I appreciate. So yeah, just some facts and figures. I think I'll be putting a news post on the website later today in celebration of our first year, and I'll probably share some more concrete numbers. But needless to say, we've sort of continued to experience growth. With the news site in particular, it's usually followed bursts of content. So we had a spike of traffic following CES. We had a spike of traffic following Computex. And every time we've launched reviews, especially kind of when we've been the first to launch reviews for various products, the recent cadre of power supplies being a perfect example, that's also given us nice boosts in traffic and exposures. People have gone to us first, since we were somehow oftentimes the first people to have reviews out for these products.
By a significant amount of time on one of them.
Yes, no, it's very true. And in fact, actually, John, I was hoping you could speak towards our relationship with a lot of these companies and vendors, because this is one of the things that was sort of the most surprising and the most exciting for me to witness. Obviously, when a company lends out products for review, I mean, there's self-interest there insofar that they're hoping to get coverage of their thing that they've recently launched, and obviously the intent, or at least the hope on their part, is that they get a solid review that sort of builds awareness of the product, but in a positive way. But they don't just give out hardware for folks to review to just anyone, right? Like that. They're picky insofar that they want to make sure when they're lending hardware or giving hardware for review purposes that they have an audience and that they're obviously competent and and can do a good job of reviewing and speak well and see the product for what it is or what it's trying to be. And I figured we'd be able to get there eventually and start building those relationships with manufacturers as we demonstrated that we were really serious about doing reviews well and about sort of our mission and duty as journalists as well as enthusiasts. But how quickly we were able to begin doing that was really what surprised me. And you were the person at the forefront of building those relationships. So I was hoping if you could spend a minute or two to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I didn't expect the manufacturers to come on. The manufacturers that have supported us so far, I didn't expect them to come on so early. The first one that we approached was CryoRig through their PR company, Etonics. And they're happy to send us a C7. They saw, and this is the important thing for us, is they saw the market segment that we are focused on, and they're interested in it. They want the feedback. They want more information. They want to see what our community thinks of everything. It's not just throwing stuff at the wall and hope it sticks. They're actually wanting this from us. So we had them, along with CryoReg, the same company also represents Scythe, so we had a few Scythe coolers to review. And then, completely and utterly out of the blue, Noctua approached us and offered us some of their coolers to review, and this is a huge thing for me because I've always been a fan of Noctua's products just because they're so focused on what they do, and they do it pretty damn well. And we've continued to build on these relationships with these manufacturers. Some have come on later on, like Geek Store. James has been in contact with Leanne Lee and Silverstone and Corsair, and it's just building on the relationships that we've got with them, and part of that is just giving back this information. We've got so many passionate people in our community that want the best for small form factor, and because of that, we can pass on the stuff saying back to the manufacturer saying, well, yeah, this was a great product, but you can do this better, or even via the format of the review, we can say, well, this doesn't quite work for us, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's been an interesting part of it, and I'll let James speak to that in a bit because you guys have really been the ones doing these reviews. But what's been interesting to me is that it's not just sort of a matter of I think as a reader, I see a review and I'm like, okay, well, they talked with the company and the company's like, we'll lend you or just give you this thing, and you can just let the world know what you think of it. But there is definitely a lot of dialogue surrounding that relationship and that conversation, and it's been really interesting to sort of see what we've heard from manufacturers as we've had conversations with them. The ones that have reached out to us and have been like, we want to see if you guys would be interested in reviewing our hardware, versus the ones where we reach out to them and say like, we want to review what you're making from the perspective of someone who really cares about small form factor computing. Obviously, that means sometimes we get approached and we're talking like ridiculously massive hardware, things that don't necessarily make sense for audience. And, sometimes we feel it's worth reviewing anyway. Sometimes we've taken a pass. But I think a lot of the time, a lot of these manufacturers really are paying attention to what we publish and what we say, and they take that feedback. And I think a lot of the value they see in working with us and enabling us to review their products has a lot to do with the fact that they really do want to understand the perspective of someone who is focused on small form factor computing, because they do see that as a growing and an important segment. And we're fortunate to have shown up at basically the right time, where we're assembling a critical mass of people that would consider themselves enthusiasts, small form factor enthusiasts, and yet at the same time there isn't really anywhere else where you have a focus or a specialization in that regard. And so that gives us sort of a unique opportunity to have that sort of relationship with manufacturing partners.
Yeah, I've been amazed like how quickly we're able to start getting review hardware. I kind of figured we'd have to be like where we're at now. I could see it, but I was like a year ago, I was figuring we'd have to be probably still several times bigger than we are now before we would really be able to catch the eye of manufacturers. So it was amazing to me that even like really early on, like we were getting like John was getting coolers like galore from like Noxua and Cryorig and Scythe and all these things. I mean, I think he was just like overrun with swimming and heat sinks at one point.
Swimming in coolers.
I'm still swimming in heat sinks.
So
It's cool though.
yeah. So yeah, that to me that's been really cool to see that it's just that like even like a really small community was able to kind of start gathering like hardware for review. I mean, some of it has had to been purchased. Like I think I think any of us have yet to get a motherboard for review, which is unfortunate.
Nope.
So I've had to buy the two motherboards I've reviewed. But I it's interesting though. Like I'm not sure if it's just what the deal is like, because it was the EVGA X99 Micro 2 and then the Asus X99 MWS, and like I don't think they ever gave review samples of those boards because there's only two other reviews that I know of for the Asus, and just a couple for the EVGA. So, I mean, it's unfortunate I had to buy them, but I guess the good thing is like, man, we had reviews like one of the few and definitely the earliest for both of those products. But so hopefully that will change in the next year, though, is that we can get the kind of attention of motherboard makers, start getting those in for review too, because some of the nicer ones, like the kind of the premium ITX and Micro ATX, they're a bit pricey. So continuing to buy them is not really practical.
Well, and the other area in which we were able to get reviews up early was power supplies. And there's actually one story I want to bring up, just because I think it sort of speaks well to us as an organization and to James in particular. James was actually doing some research for one of Silverstone's power supplies that I believe you're working to get the review up for, or were about to publish, or whatever.
Yeah, I was doing research. It was actually for the Lee, the PE 750, the 750 watt platinum rated SFXL unit. Yeah, and then I came across I forget what it was. I was looking up the UL listing for Enhance, I think. Yeah, I think it was Enhance because they're the ones who make the PE 750. They're the OEM. And like I just noticed some listings on the Enhance, or I noticed some entries on the Enhance UL listing for like Silverstone model numbers, because Silverstone has very distinctive model number schemes. A lot of people complain they're confusing, but I don't know. I go into that on the SX700 LPT review about how to decode it. And I noticed there was a bunch of model numbers for power supplies that didn't exist. But specifically, they had some for it was a SX800 LTI, which translates to a 800 watt SFXL titanium rated modular unit. So that's interesting, obviously. So I reached out to Tony at Silverstone, which some of our listeners may be familiar with him, but Tony O, he's the like main product manager at Silverstone. Really nice guy. Like it's really cool that he really engages with the SFF community, much more so than almost any other manufacturer, because I mean Silverstone's been a big leader in kind of SFF hardware. They do like cases and power supplies that really only until very recently have other manufacturers really started pushing in those categories, especially power supplies. So Silverstone's been a kind of a leader in that. And then also like Tony engages with the SFF community. Not on SFF forum yet, though. I'm trying to talk him into joining. But he's been on like the hard forum, SFF sub forum, and I don't know if it's him or somebody else from Silverstone I've seen on overclock.net. So like they really engage with the community and get feedback. So even though he's not part of SFF forum yet, I've been emailing with him back and forth for various other products. And I just asked him. I wasn't really expecting an answer anytime soon, since this is like literally like the day before Computex started, that I sent this email asking like, hey, what what's up with this listing? And yeah, he replied back like the same day, which was really gracious of him, and confirmed that they do have a 800 watt titanium rated SFXL unit coming out later this year, hopefully anyway, if it doesn't get delayed. So yeah, we were, I think, technically, we weren't the first people to post like anything about it, because there was a YouTube video from I think it was an Indonesian channel. I may be wrong on that. But it only had like a few hundred views, and I only found it because I was specifically looking for that model number. And yeah, we were the first, I think, kind of like news site to break the news on that. So it was really fun, kind of just doing some detective work and stuff. And luckily, I was able to get a quick reply back, and we were able to confirm it and have kind of like basically a kind of exclusive first news post on that. So that was just kind of a really cool thing that happened.
Yes, excellent detective work on your part too. Inadvertent detective work, but
yeah, accidental, which is really weird. Yeah,
that's okay. You can still take credit.
It's the result that matters.
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, so that sort of brings us to like, modern day, present stuff, where we're at now. But I also wanted to talk a little bit and sort of close this episode and doing a bit of forecasting and looking forward, and just spending a minute or two each, I suppose, to elaborate a bit on where we see us going. Obviously, we've had some recent developments. We onboarded Jay. Actually, that wasn't so recent, but we onboarded Jay onto the team. What was this, like 6 months ago? Like around the beginning of the year?
Yeah, it's actually been a while. Yeah.
Yeah. And then more recently, Tyler Robb has joined us, and we also have a member of the forum that's now running an Instagram feed for us. So our team has been steadily growing ever since, and we've continued to do much of the same content we've been doing since the beginning. Some interviews, lots of reporting on news, reviews whenever we get our hands on hardware. But what do you guys think we'll be talking about a year from now? Like, what do you think is on the docket for us, or things that we're gonna work on, or at least try to work on in the next 365 days or so?
So I would, kind of like I mentioned earlier, I'd like to see. I mean, we're already doing really good, I think, on like heat sinks and power supplies. So I'd like to see us be able to kind of do more with like motherboard reviews, because that's definitely a big category for SFF, where especially like we saw with like Skylake and then the X99 micro ATX lines, is that the choice of motherboards has been, there's several of them available, but it's kind of the situation where like there's not been any one board that everybody can kind of like point at and say like that's the one to get. This generation's been very much like it really, really depends on what you need as to which board you should get. Like so I think being able to do more motherboard reviews, I think, is going to be really important if this continues to be true. Because there's not any clear-cut answer right now, like with the Skylake ITX boards. So you really had to kind of go through the reviews and like kind of just really weigh your options to figure out what you want. So I'd like to see like us be able to do reviews, because a lot of the bigger sites don't really give it the SFF focus for these ITX boards. So that the wiki, we haven't mentioned it at all, but like SFF wiki needs some more work, which is just something I just haven't had really time to focus on. So that going forward over the next year, I'd really like to kind of flesh that out and kind of get all kind of like all the basic content in there. So that, and of course just more articles and more reviews, and then hopefully kind of like, we'll have to do this very, very carefully to make sure it doesn't kind of go astray. But I'd really would like to do build contests or something like that at some point with the community, with like prizes and things like that. So that's something I've been kind of toying around with for a while. So I'd really like to kind of implement that over the next year sometime. And but yeah, just kind of growing the community, growing the site, get more hardware reps on the forum to interact with the community, and just kind of just we've done a good job so far. So just kind of more of the same is what I'd like to see.
Fair enough. And how about you, John? What are you looking forward to in this second year of life of smallformfactor.net?
I'm going to be the one that says it, but I kind of expected where we're sitting now is where we would have been in a year's time. It's been such a surprise that we've grown the way we have. Considering my experience with the previous iterations, it's been interesting. In the next year or so from now, more product reviews. I'd love to have a look at some more cases. It's something we like the motherboard reviews. We are lacking on case reviews on the website. We've got a couple. Yeah, the Johnsbow case and the Geek case, and just trying to. It'll be interesting to see different sides of the market with cases and stuff like this. The ones that I've looked at so far have been very niche market, very small, very limited market. Not many people have heard of them or seen them before. I'd like to try some more mainstream things. And yeah, just content. Another 52 weekly rants for me to write. And yes, I realise I'm late with the current one.
So many rants.
I like complaining about things, but I've noticed that out of the content that goes up on the front page, the rants do pick up a lot of forum comments. A lot of people want to put their voice in as well, and it's great.
Yeah, no, that's like half of the beauty of the website, really, is being able to engage the community and have sort of discussion, discourse, and dialogue. And that's why I think they kind of both reinforce each other really well. You know, they complement each other in a beautiful way. And normally I really just avoid at all costs comment threads for news stories because they're just cesspools of the worst of people. But we've been able to neatly avoid that, which is nice.
It's the same goes for like a review website that doesn't have comments. It's kind of lacking in that community feel. You wonder who they're actually writing for.
Yeah, it's just there's a disconnect there.
Yeah,
that's right. But yeah, and
we're all about the community here.
No kidding. We are the community. No. But yeah, I mean, I think I'd agree with you guys for the most part. I think there are a lot of opportunities from what we review to how we review to maybe some of the equipment and tools that we use in review that I think we could sort of think about and work at and improve. I mean, I think we do pretty well and have a pretty good process so far, but I definitely think we could sort of rack it up a few additional notches and really sort of set ourselves apart. I think that we've been slowly but surely adding people to the team who have been doing writing or editing, and that's been great. And it'd be nice if we could add a few more folks just to sort of keep the flow of content, heavier and even more freely. I think that, although our audience is quite large in both websites, we're seeing growth and continued growth, and I hope that sort of can continue at roughly the same pace we've seen now. And most of all, I just hope that we can preserve what we have now, and I think we've done a good job of this. And I think that at the very beginning, when it was like literally 30, 40 folks on the forum and the website was this brand new thing, I think one of the things we've been very focused and deliberate on is preserving that sense of community and everyone knowing each other, and that beautiful camaraderie that comes along with a well-moderated community that finds the right balance of being open and inviting, but also sort of encouraging a culture and of friendliness and willingness to understand and see others' perspectives and mostly of respect. That's always hard to do as you scale, especially when you're talking about like scaling a community that's online. But I think we've done a really good job of that. I think our content's done a really good job of balancing reviews versus news content versus reporting on some of the stuff that's happening on the forum. I think, as we've added like the wiki and the podcast, we've added stuff that really has been beneficial to the community and to this sort of network of sites that we've been building. And, it's crazy to think about how far we've come, even just in the past 6 months, let alone in the past 12. I was mentioning some of the stats earlier. From the beginning of the year, we've more than tripled the population of the forum, and it's not even like, oh, well, we've grown 10%. It's like, no, we've grown by factors, by multiples of the total earlier. Like the smallest number I could find is like 250% improvement in 6 months. I mean, it's crazy. It's just it's absolutely crazy. But it's been awesome to witness. It's been awesome to build and support and maintain all of this. And for what it's worth to all our listeners and even to the folks that aren't listening but that visit our news site or are a member of the community, and especially a big thank you to those that are a member of the forum and are a subscriber at any tier, and are thus helping us to pay the ever-escalating costs of hosting this. As I mentioned earlier, we're in the hundreds of thousands of page views now. My profound gratitude for joining us for this ride and this experiment of the community we've been building and the news resource we've been building and the podcast we've been running and the wiki that we've been slowly but surely adding content to. It's very much a project we've been doing in service of this community that we care about so much and that we ourselves are a part of. And we're just so happy, or at least I'm happy, about how well it's taken on and how positive the feedback's been. And I just hope that continues and we can sort of maintain our current trajectory of growth and success, because it's been, I think, well beyond what any of us ever would have expected, and in all the best of ways.
I'd just like to add that, it's been really exciting to see like how much the news side and the forum has grown over the last year. It's been very humbling, because when I first started, it was really just to have a kind of a small place for kind of case designers to talk, but now it's kind of a community. I mean, there's of course still case designers, a lot more of them now. It's been really, really cool to see all the projects people are working on, but then also just not just creators, but also consumers, but also like really good dialogue back and forth. Really great questions, really great answers. It's like the news site's great, but to me, like the community is still kind of the best part of this whole thing, and it's been really really exciting to see how much it's grown and how not only that it's grown, but like Joshua was saying, that it's still a very welcoming, very informative environment and very respectful. So I really big thanks to everybody for that. I've really, really been appreciative of it.
How about you, John?
Just thank you, everyone. From the staff to the community to the manufacturers to just the person just Googling and finding small form factor stuff because they want to get started in it, or they're just sick of their big ATX rig. We thank you for your support and keep it up, because we'll sure keep it up.
Yes, we will. And with that, we will have to close the episode for now. My name is Joshua Ramirez, aka Playful Phoenix. Today I was joined by the other two co-founders of smallformfactor.net. That is John Morrison, aka Confusus, and James Schell, aka Amophobia. Catch us on the forum, listen to our episodes, read our cool content. Keep it going. Be with us, be strong, be part of our community, and we look forward to celebrating another year, 365 days from now. But until then, thank you so much for listening. Have a nice one.